Coming up on the Men at the Movies podcast, we enter the world of Zombieland. Columbus' life was dominated by fear, which led to rules leaving him alone and searching for family. Through forgiveness and breaking the rules for love, he found the family he had been looking for all along. It's time to nut up or shut up and join us as we discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being. Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and joining me from Wisconsin is Joshua C. Chad. Hey Joshua, how are you doing today, man?
Doing good today. How are you doing?
Good. What does the C stand for?
Middle name. I don't know if I want to get the middle name out there. That way, then everybody's going to know.
That's fine. That's fine. We're good. You can, as we say, you can protect what needs to be protected. Vulnerability does not mean transparency. So.
Oh, that's good. Actually, I like that.
Oh, yeah. All right. And you can also authenticity. Same thing. Vulnerability and authenticity doesn't mean transparency because you don't want to share all your stuff with all the people. Only with the select few.
Yes.
So, Joshua, you and I have been emailing, having conversations sporadically for about 2 years now, trying to get you on to talk about Zombieland. And a heads up for anyone listening with kids in the car, the clips alone are pretty spicy, so you may want to put the earmuffs on. If the E on the podcast didn't give it away. But so, because I met you through Sarah Daniels. I can't remember her. She had a nickname for the podcast. Like it's not Pod Mother, but something like that. I don't remember now. And so it's really cool. I'm excited to do Zombieland, not just because it's a super fun movie to watch and great writing, but because you've written books about a zombie apocalypse.
Yep.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. 5 so far and 5 short stories.
So what is it about the zombie apocalypse that not just like movies you love to watch, but also stories that you want to kind of share about?
So I was actually thinking about that. So I'm currently, because I write a lot. Well, I have a lot to write about, I should say. I'm getting back into writing a lot. It's been on hold for the past 3 years, but I'm writing a post-apocalyptic fantasy, which is the melding of my two favorite things. And I was trying to think of like, why do I love the apocalypse so much? Like, part of it is just the end of the world theme of there's just no laws. It's really based on your moral compass, and there's usually in the good apocalyptic. There we go. Media that I like, that it's always family and it's always community. Like they're gathering a group around them, or at least a person or two. And so I love that. But there was more, and it finally made me realize the apocalypse is a lot like the Wild West. And I grew up on Westerns. Like that is primarily the movie genre I watched. And so it reminds me of just like the Westerns where you're going out somewhere that's like more of a wasteland, and there's more tribal communities and small towns and stuff. And it's really the law of the gun. And so there's something that just intrigues me. And then the other thing, I always had a question of, I mean, I even think about it being a father and a father who believes in protecting my family. I've got my concealed carry, and there's various guns around the house for if somebody does break in. So don't. And so
heads up.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and I'm not going to give you my address because I don't want to have to do that. But like, I always think about like
no address.
Exactly. There's certain things that you don't want everybody to know.
Right.
So yeah, and I constantly think about like how far would I go to protect my family, and so that became the first concept that really started off my first zombie book was how far would you go to protect the ones you love? And not only just like in a self-defense situation, but almost a more offensive situation where it's like, this could be a threat. and what do you do? And it was really fun taking that out over 5 books, like, and seeing when these characters, they go too far, and they get too kind of a, is it Minority Report or one of those movies where they start like removing people for the crimes they may commit kind of thing? Yeah. Yep. So kind of that kind of thing.
And that's what you see a lot with all the stories, is what happens if we put this person in this situation. And I mean, that's sort of Breaking Bad. Here's a man who's sort of, in this situation. He's a chemistry teacher, not making money, works, pulls side jobs. Now he's got cancer and wants to basically provide for his family. And so he's in this series of decisions that lead him into, obviously, in that situation, especially very dark situations. But it's also this similar in these sorts of movies. And this one is a pretty lighthearted, hilarious take on zombie apocalypse stuff. You have mentioned in your email wanting to discuss possibly The Road down the road.
No jokes.
Which is probably on the opposite end of the spectrum and super dark of what sort of the whole idea of look at what humanity is capable of doing to each other. And that's, why we talk about, we love war movies and all this is, it's like when we're put in those situations, like you didn't say, what would someone do? What would I do to protect my family? And there's that sense of, would I prove myself? And would I step up? Or what, like the whole idea of you never really know who you are till you're put in these situations.
Yep.
So family is a big theme of this movie. And so we're going to kick off the clips. We have a lot of clips, not sure if we're going to get them all. I describe them as like, this is like the buffet. Here's the food that's available. If you don't want crab ragoons, you don't need to eat crab ragoons. If you want extra teriyaki, we can do the teriyaki chicken. It's fine. It's a big Chinese food buffet.
Just hopefully not with the stomach ache afterwards.
No MSG, no super preservatives, no no bloating. Hopefully, that's for the zombies. I wanted to start with a clip from the very end of the movie because I think that shapes how we're going to frame our discussion. This whole idea, as I was watching it this morning and we were discussing beforehand, I saw it differently of how do we as Christians, followers of Jesus, friends of God, how do we proceed in a world that's sort of, dead, right? If unbelievers are considered dead, how do we proceed in a world where, and obviously our difference is through the power of Jesus, zombies can come back to life. Mm-hmm. Again, that's super over spiritualizing things.
Because that's a really good concept. Like, what if?
New series forming right in front of us.
Jesus versus zombies. Gonna sell both.
But how do we navigate in this world that's set up against us? As John Eldridge likes to say, our hearts were not meant for the world we live in. Our hearts were meant for Eden. So outside of Eden, our heart is in danger. And that's why Jesus came, to bind up the brokenhearted. But anyway, enough of this. This is the very end of the movie where Columbus is sort of looking around. It starts off, he's on a journey to find his family in Columbus, Ohio. And what happens by the end is he realizes not only that he has it, but what it is that makes life worth living and separates us from the zombies in the first place.
That face? That's me realizing that those smart girls in that big black truck and that big guy in that snakeskin jacket, they were the closest to something I'd always wanted, but never really had. A family. I trusted them and they trusted me. Rule number 32. Enjoy the little things. Tallahassee got his Twinkie. And even though life would never be simple or innocent again, as he savored that spongy yellow log of cream, we had hope. We had each other. And without other people, well, you might as well be a zombie.
Well, I think for one, we're made for community. We're made for the ultimate fellowship with Jesus and fellowship with other believers. And so I think that's just huge. It's just written on our hearts. And we're kind of like he realizes, we're not meant to go it alone. And like he said, if you are going it alone, what makes you any different than a zombie? You're just surviving. You're not really living. That was one of the, that's another thing that I really like about certain post-apocalyptic fiction. It starts off where the main character is surviving, but they're not living. And then through the course of the story, they actually begin to live again.
Mm. Yeah. And that's, even this one is sort of like that, where he's surviving, he's making it, but he's alone. And really what we see through the course of the movie, through sort of, again, their creative storytelling and all this, is because of his fear and who he was, he'd been alone all his life.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think feels like it's taken me to the second clip. I don't normally do clips this quickly, but this whole idea, like, he is a scrawny, scared, maybe post-college age kid. Jesse Eisenberg plays him amazingly. Jesse Eisenberg, Emma Stone, Woody Harrelson, fantastic cast, like perfect casting, I think. Oh, I guess Abigail Breslin, she's in there as the younger girl, as Little Rock. But there, he talks about why him. Why is he surviving when so many other people have not? And as you were saying, there's like, what is it that set him up to survive alone? And we see this, and this is very early in the movie, so we're still getting to know him. We'll talk about the rules of survival here, I'm sure, in a few minutes. But the setup is, and I think where we find ourselves many times, is in the situation he describes of alone, afraid, not really trusting everybody, keeping people at arm's distance. And while that leads us to survive, to make it, it's actually not much of a life.
I'm in Garland, Texas, and it may look like zombies destroyed it, but that's actually just Garland. It's been 2 months since Patient Zero took a bite of a contaminated burger at a Gas and Gulp. Just 2 months, and I might be the last non-cannibal freak in the country. I may seem like an unlikely survivor with all my phobias and irritable bowel syndrome, but I had the advantage of never having any friends or any close family. I survive because I play it safe and follow the rules. My rules.
You want to say how you use that line in one of your books?
Yeah. So I was definitely chuckling when he's talking about Garland, and he's like, "Oh no, that's just Garland." So I wrote, once again, like we talked about, Zombie Apocalypse, and in I think it's book 3, they're going through a town, and I won't. Well, I guess I've named it in the book, so it doesn't really matter. So they're going through a town in Montana called Lame Deer. And it's about like it sounds. It literally, I've driven through it. I try not to. You definitely don't want to stop there because it's not a place you want to stop. And it looks like the apocalypse has gone through it. So as I'm writing this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this would be a perfect place to put in like the quote from Zombieland. So one of the characters is like, man, the apocalypse hit this place hard. And then one of the other characters who's familiar with the area is like, no, that's just Lame Deer. And it was just, that line at the opening of that movie is, it gets me every time. Every time.
It's a great movie. But what I enjoyed is, that why he survived is because of a lack of attachments. And so the picture I have in my head is of people who go to church. And they go to church, and I actually have a specific person in mind for this. He goes to church, comes in about 5 minutes late, and then leaves directly. Like, doesn't have conversations with anyone coming in or going out. He's in and out. I think we can think, hey, I'm surviving. I'm a believer. I'm not a zombie. But that whole framework, that whole dynamic and contrast is, without those connections, we're basically zombies, right? I mean, he's surviving, but he's not really living, or as Matthew McConaughey would say, living. No G at the end.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the verse, "Iron sharpens iron." I mean, you look at, I think it's in maybe Acts. No, it was in Hebrews. We just went through Hebrews. Well, I guess not recently. It was last year. But like, there's a place where like we are commanded to meet with other believers in the body of Christ, and like, and our church puts a really big import on it. Like, don't just come into church and leave. Like, it's not meant to just be an experience that we, or something we just check off. It's meant to be a part of our lives where we invite other people in. And I mean, it's I've been to a lot of, I mean, I've lived in Alaska, Colorado, Montana, Michigan, Wisconsin, and been to a lot of different churches. And it's amazing how well I do personally, depending on what the church community is like, and depending on how well I actually interact or dive into the church community, because the church community can be the best in the nation. And if you're going in with walls up, with rules keeping you away from other people, keeping people at arm's distance, it doesn't matter how good the church is. You're not going to find that community. And we talked about, I mean, I think everybody desires that, but I think it's fear. And a lot of times I think it's fear of getting hurt, especially people that have been hurt, that just put those walls up and keep them like, nah, I don't want to get close again because it didn't work out well the last time.
That whole idea, like, I know so many people that throw around the term church trauma because of how they were raised, or how they're, how their experience in the church hurt them. And part of the problem with that, and I've had people tell me, oh yeah, that's, you suffered church trauma because of what you went through. And I think that unfairly labels the church, the big C church.
Mm-hmm.
It holds it to this level of perfection, this unattainable connection. And, oh, they have to lead well. They have to do all the things well, right? Like a pastor is held to an unattainable standard. He's got to be a great communicator. He's got to be a great leader. He's got to have a business mind. He's got to mentor. He's got to study. Like, it's a superhuman job. And like, right, well, I don't feel like that many pastors probably listen to the podcast, so it's pretty easy to say, well, what does that mean for me? Because I'm not a pastor. I don't have standards. But I think you do. I mean, so I got to throw this out, and I'm going to couch this as, I'm not saying this is bad, but so I have tickets to a U2 concert next year, this out at the Sphere. And probably by the time this airs, I will actually have been to the concert already. But so I was inviting some guys who I do love the band. And I said, and I was like, hey man, here's how much this ticket costs. We'll stay cheap, all this other stuff. And, for me, I'm looking at it as, I don't give myself little A adventures a lot. Like I've gone to Colorado for a retreat with Wild at Heart, or I do a men's retreat here in the Carolinas. The things that I do that qualify as adventure has a lot of meaning and depth and power behind it. I don't do a lot of stuff that's just like frivolous and fun just for the enjoyment of it. Like that idea of play just for the sake of playing. So I was like, man, this is a pretty good opportunity to just play. I mean, a band I love that I've been seeing since I was in college, going out. I don't really care about Vegas or whatever, but maybe get some golf in. And my buddy responded. This one guy, he said, hey, that sounds great. I'd love to go, but that's in the middle of baseball and softball season. And I'll be coaching, and I'm hoping work will be busy. And so I can't make it. Like, those are good reasons. And I'm not dismissing the reasons, but I'm going back to this standard. as dads, I'm picking on dads here because that's what I'm talking about. Because I do this. We hold ourselves to this unattainable level of perfection. Like this dude, our first conversation, we talked about Bono and U2, the first time we ever met. So we have a shared love for this group, but he's choosing not to because he feels incapable of missing one game. And I think we do the same thing with husbands. Like I get stressed out around the holidays, around my wife's been working on her doctorate, and I put a lot of pressure on myself because I want her not to feel extra burdened. I want to relieve, between working and getting her doctorate, it's like I try to take care of stuff so she doesn't feel burdened. Mm-hmm. So then when one morning she says, it seems like I'm walking around whistling and getting ready to go to church. She's like, "Oh, I hope you come back in a good mood. It's good to see you in a good mood." It's like, I feel like I'm usually in a good mood. She kind of is like, maybe not. And then that pressure, right? I was like, oh, I'm dumping my shit onto her. And then so it's like, wait, I'm trying not to burden her, but then I've got my own stuff I'm dealing with. And we had a conversation last night that she said, because I told her a few weeks ago, it's like, you don't have to worry about fixing things because you tell me it's broken and then I fix it. It could be the internet. It could be something in the house. It could be whatever. And she told me, she's like, there's some times where you need me to fix things and you just need to tell me about it. And for me, it's like, I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling sort of forgotten in the wake of all the stuff you're pursuing. And the only thing that really fixes it is like her presence. It's like, I just need, like, we call it eyeball time, where we look each other eye to eye and not at the phones and not at the TV. So Joshua, has there been any times like that where you felt like you hold yourself to this higher standard, either as a dad or either as a father or a husband, or even working, as you mentioned, you've got like 3 or 4 different revenue streams going on?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because I was just talking to I was meeting up with my pastor yesterday because today's Friday. And we were kind of talking about that. And yeah, so like starting 3 years ago when we had Wyatt until now. So for like the past 3 years, because it's funny, like you get used to just being an adult a little bit. I mean, I was 22 or 23 before I got married. So I've been out of the house for 4 or 5 years, and I was used to living on my own. And then you get married, and then you have this other person that, I mean, I think like you were talking about, like pastors are called to a higher calling, but and a higher accountability, but they also they will never attain perfection this side of eternity. So they sometimes hold themselves, and we hold them to a higher standard than should be. And there's the same thing as being a husband and a father. Like we are held to a higher standard. Like we will answer for some extra accountability. But once again, we end up putting more on top of it because a lot of times we try and do it on our own strength when we need to be doing it in God's strength. I literally have a tattoo that says "by His strength" on my arm because I need to remember that, and I still forget daily, multiple times daily. But it's funny because you're talking about that, and I was talking to my pastor about like, oh yeah, and I was just talking about like, man, reading the Bible, it's been more just routine and like the experience I want it to be lately, and part of that's just probably the way I'm approaching it, and part of it is like we were talking, and he's like, sounds like you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and I'm like, no, and then I'm like, yeah, in the summer especially because we have 2 small businesses, each with 2 or 3 wings of the business. And then I got a part-time job. So I'm literally doing like 5 to 6 different areas of income. And so it got a little crazy this summer. And it's, I don't know, it's just funny because I mean, it's not funny. It's actually tragic, but you got to laugh about it because in the midst of it, you're like, I mean, yeah, but we put more pressure on us than we need. I mean, Jesus says, I think it's in Matthew, but like, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Like there is a yoke there. There is a burden there that we have as Christians, but it's light. It's easy when we trust in God and rely on his strength, the power he works mightily within me. But so, I mean, I just say, and I'm not going to say men because it's humans in general, but I think men too, especially, like we just are like, oh no, I got this. I got this. I mean, that's what, I mean, some of my favorite movies, especially Westerns, like they just, I mean, John Wayne,
right.
Just suck it up, get back on the horse. What's his quote about courage isn't the absence of fear. It's getting back on the horse anyway, or something like that. And it's just like, and that is true, but when we're doing that on our own, it doesn't end well. We leave casualties. We leave bodies along the road because we just either get too focused on the work or too much on the other stuff. And then all of a sudden we're not providing emotionally and spiritually for our families. And yeah. So yes, I definitely relate to that pressure.
Yeah. And a lot of times, as we see, when Tallahassee and Columbus meet, there is that standoff, but it takes one of them to sort of put the gun down and give the hitchhiker sign, right? He's like,
yes.
And I had actually, that was one of the clips I had meant to get their meeting. Because again, when you meet somebody, you're like, oh, I feel like God's put us together to walk this path alongside each other to with, the iron sharpens iron, which I've talked about before, is like, that takes friction, that takes heat. It's not an easy process. It's a grinding process. But they're just like, I can already tell that you are going to get on my nerves by Texarkana.
Yep.
But that's how we react when we look at people like, this guy, really? He says, I'm hard to get along with, and I can already tell you're a little bitch. But again, by the end of the movie, these are the people who make them families because of the battles that we face together. So we just got done talking about all of that, the power of going through battle together in the Foxhole with our Band of Brothers series. But it's true because you don't always like the guy in your foxhole. And even, the girls, they tricked them not once, but twice. And what did it take for them to, there's the scene where they're both the standoff where they're both got the guns pointed at each other, and Columbus says, "Hey, can we remember that we are 4 non-zombie people in the car who are trying to survive? Can we act like adults for 5 seconds?" But that happens because it starts with forgiveness. Like, they have to forgive the people because I think we're all just trying to survive. And some of the rules that we've set in place are important because my rules are not your rules. And sometimes our rules might clash, but at the end of the day, we're on the same team.
Yeah, because it reminds me, my wife always calls me out on this. Because relationships are hard.
Yeah,
they're not easy, and so like we get in we got a small group of very kind of intentional. I mean, most churches do, but it's a very kind of, we try and go really intentional with them because it's a bigger church. It's like 50 people, 2 services, so you got to have small groups to make it feel small. And I have unrealistic expectations going into it of like, oh yeah, this is going to be good. It's a great church, good community. And then there's always the 1 or 2 guys that I'm just like, oh, they annoy me. And it's nothing to do with them. It's all to do with me. I mean, there's a little bit of probably personality friction, but it's just like, I resist. I'm a prime example. I resist community. I am a loner. Like, and I think a lot of men are, maybe not but let me phrase that. A lot of the men in my life are, a lot of the men that I've grown up around. And so it's just a natural way of doing things. But it's like we were talking about, like you need that, you need that community, and especially men need other men. And, and so it's just like, it just reminded me of all that. If relationships are really hard, and there's going to be a time when one or both have to suck it up and forgive. Like, I mean, Christ has forgiven us, so we can forgive other people. And we're called to that, whether they deserve forgiveness or not.
Or
that is
ask.
still, yes, exactly. That is still our job. And it is so hard sometimes. And some of the people I like the most, I get friction. I mean, I don't think I've ever had more friction in relation. I mean, I'm married, so there's a wife, but with another man other than my brother. And we have a very strong bond, and I love my brother to death. They're actually, when we moved up here, that was one of the considering factors, was the church. And then my brother's here. And, but I've never had more friction with anybody else. Like, but it's the strongest bond. And like you're talking about, iron sharpens iron, that takes friction, that takes hate, and going through the hardships, and coming out the other end. And if you don't even have to do the hardship well, but if you do the reconciliation well, it's just going to strengthen the relationship.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, relationships are hard.
Yeah. And like, for me, it's happened a lot with my wife, where something happened. Like even the other day when I'm upset, she's at work a lot longer than I thought she was. Like I had stuff wanted to do and all this. And I think about, we had this conversation. It's like, what I am actually wanting is connection with you. And I know that if I freak out and I complain about work, or I feel like work's more important than me, that's going to drive us apart. And I was like, that's working. So I have to sort of slow my reaction to say, okay, what do I want from this relationship in this moment? And I know there's people out there who have terrible families who just, it doesn't work, or their families are gone and they're orphans. That was one of the lines. We're all orphans in Zombieland. And that idea, like, it's so easy to sort of wrap ourselves up in that orphan mentality. And this isn't going to be about the orphan spirit today, but it's easy to accept that, even if we come from a great home, even if we're like, I have a great family. Like you said, I love my brother to death, but we have friction. I love my wife. We have a great relationship, but there's moments of friction where it's like, you did nothing wrong, but I still need to forgive you because I just feel hurt. I just feel, as the kids say, I feel a certain kind of way. Right? Like, I need to forgive you. You did nothing wrong, but I need to forgive you so that we can move on and have a positive trend to our relationship. And what we see is, I want to play the next clip. And this goes back to Columbus when 406 comes in, but he's sort of setting the stage for his lifestyle. Again, remember, he's an unlikely survivor because he has no social ties. But what he says is, it's because he's afraid of everything. Like what I told myself when my friend said, hey, I couldn't go to the concert with you. It's like, I've got 4 tickets. I'm not going to have anybody to go with. I'm going to be in freaking Vegas by myself. This is going to suck. Like, these are all the things I'm going to say I say to myself in the moment. And I think from a certain level, I have to forgive him for his choices that are not mine. Because he's got, like you said, as fathers and husbands or leaders, we're held to a higher standard. You've got to lead your family the way you feel appropriate, the way you feel God is leading you. And so there's a sense of like, oh, you're missing out. There's a sense that I'm being selfish because I just want friends to go with. And so, again, he didn't do anything wrong, but I need to forgive him anyway for the way my heart is responding. And I say that because the only other option is what Columbus describes in this scene a life alone?
Truth is, I was always kind of phobic. I found lots of things disturbing, like undertow or department store Santas, being alone with a baby. But the thing I fear more than anything, yes, even more than zombies, fucking clowns. When you're afraid of everything that's out there, you quit going out there. Which is what happened to me before Zombieland. Friday night, third straight week indoors, World of Warcraft, Leaning Tower of pizza boxes, Code Red Mountain Dew, Pride, nowhere. Dignity, long gone. Virginity, totally justifiable to speculate on. Smooth. My whole life, all I'd ever wanted was to find a girl and fall in love, bring her home to meet the folks. Then again, since my folks are a couple of paranoid shut-ins like me, maybe this girl could bring me home to her folks. And then I'd finally be a member of a cool, functional family.
So that's the tension of this whole movie, right? Jesse Eisenberg's character, Columbus, wants to be a part of a fully functional family. He has a family, but he's like, oh, they're crazy people like me. But the other aspect, he has this thing that's holding him back. When you're afraid of everything out there, you quit going out there.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because thinking about it, and I just made this realization. Well, and I probably realized it subconsciously before, but like his rules are based on fear. Like all his rules are to keep him alive, but they're not like I would argue they're not survival based. They're not survival for the sake of survival. They're fear based. Like he's created all these rules because he's afraid. And that's why one of the reasons why he's not living is fear. Fear is deadly. And so it's just, I think we all have rules, that we use as excuses to keep us from living well. I mean, there's probably some good rules we have that we need to stick to, but then there's probably some ones that we need to let go or we need to relax on. And this is coming from, almost 8.5 years of marriage. I'm a bit OCD. I love rules. One of my favorite things about getting a new board game is reading the rule book, not even playing it. I've got 2 board games in my closet that I haven't even played. I've just read the rules and they're like, it's like a 3 to 4 hour thing of reading these rules. It's awesome. And so as somebody who loves rules, I'm always reminded of my wife and now having kids and having trying to not have a lot of rules and have the rules that you need to raise kids well. But it's like, my wife will call me out sometimes and she's like, does that really need to be a rule? And I'm like, yes. And then I sit down a little bit later and I'm like, no, that's just, organization or control or something. And so I get it, but I feel like we just create so much, we can create enough rules to where we're crippling ourselves. And I'm actually reading through, Psalm 119, which is massive. It's the biggest, chapter in the Bible. And, I'm only 16 verses into it. I'm taking it 8 at a time. And it's amazing because it's talking about God's rules and his laws and his testimonies and his precepts. And it's funny because it's not funny. It's freeing because there's a line in there that it's like lead me on the lead me on the path or of your rules or your precepts. And it's like the rules aren't that they're laws. It's called the law, but they're not laws for the sake of law. His laws, his precepts, God's precepts are a journey. They're a way to live, not so much things not to do or things to do. It is a lifestyle. It is a heart mentality that we need to have. And so it's just cool to see that in the Bible where there's rules and there's laws and there's ones we need to follow, but it's not about following them. You could follow everything the Bible says. And if you don't have a relationship with Jesus, spoiler alert, you're not going where you think you're going.
You're a zombie.
Legalism. Yeah, exactly. And so it's just like, I don't know where I was going with that, but there it is.
Like you said, the law, his rules, he's got cardio because the fat ones were the first to go. He's got double tap. He's got beware of bathrooms, seat belts. In each one of those, you see people die because they didn't follow the rules. And so we structure our lives thinking, if I just have the right rules in place, like a couple of years ago, for me, it was, we're going on vacation. I was like, all right, if we're out by 9 o'clock, we'll be on the road, we'll be on the road by 9, we'll be here, we'll be there, we'll get there by this time. Like, okay, well, what happens at that time? Nothing, we get there. But I'm making everybody miserable at 8 o'clock, saying we got to keep going, we got to get packed. For an arbitrary, made up rule, we got to leave by 9. It's like, wait, yeah, we don't have to leave by 9. Like, I just totally made that up. I said, this is how it has to be. Like you said, is that with the kids of, is that really a rule? And when you stop to think about it, no jumping on the couch. That seems like it has appropriateness. But then there's times when it's okay. There's times when it's not. Or the bed. No more monkeys jumping on the bed. Between my grandchildren and your children, we've got the monkeys jumping on the bed.
Yes.
And that idea, like we create the rules, like you were just saying, because we feel like that's where we'll find life. And the more that we don't find life, like, there's at least 53 rules, and not all of them are on the Wikipedia, the Zombieland fan page. And so we see the more rules he has, the more isolated. I think there's an ad on the page that I was looking at, like the Wikipedia page, the fandom, the Zombieland page. And
I was like, that's a weird ringtone.
what? Like, I was like, did I hit a button? What is going on? So we create these rules because we think they'll keep us safe. And for him, it's don't get attached, don't get involved, don't be a hero. That's number 17. Don't be a hero. And as you mentioned, or as we've been mentioning, this idea, like, community is not safe. You're going to get hurt feelings. You're going to get insulted. You're going to get whatever. And that's their setup. That's how they look at life, is don't get attached. Don't break the rules. If I keep the rules, I'll be safe. If I keep the rules, I'll find life. And I think we sort of look at verses like be perfect because God is perfect. We look at rules like, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. And so I love that you're talking about Psalm 119, because it's all about loving the law.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But Columbus doesn't love the law. He's scared of breaking the law because he's scared of dying. And it's only when we embrace our fears, and I'm not saying I'm not calling out to break the law of God. It's as Paul in Romans will say, so, I think it's Romans where he's like, so should we keep sinning so that grace will abound? May it never be.
Yep.
But whose rules are they? I think is a question that's really important. Are they God's rules? Are they my rules? I have a friend he's struggling in his marriage, and he's like, there's two voices in me. There's one of be all in, and there's another that's like, what if I was single? I'm like, that's pretty clear cut, dude. It's like, you go with the go all in. That's the one to follow. That's the one you go with. And so this last clip I want to play is from close to the end of the movie, where Columbus they said, okay, all that garbage about don't get attached, keep yourself safe. We're going to put ourselves in harm's way to rescue the girls who've now left them two times, who tricked them twice, like stole all their stuff, and there was sort of a marriage of convenience, as it were. They're like, oh, we'll just go here. It's good for us because we can do this. But then he gets to this point, and we just talked about how the thing he's scared of most is clowns. And so, of course, as he's going to rescue Tallahassee and Little Rock, he's facing a clown. He has to break two things. He has to break his rule 17. 17's don't be a hero. He has to break his rule to be a hero. But in order to do that, he's got to face his greatest fear.
Oh my God. Look at this fucking clown. Of course. It had to be a clown. Fuck. No, it had to be a clown. And it had to be Wichita for me to finally understand that some rules are made to be broken. Time to nut up or shut up.
Oh, great scene.
It's great. It's amazing because you see it. Like, it's so much of the show don't tell moment. Of you see it. Like, in order for us to find the life we actually want, in his case, it's the family. Again, going back to the clip we played first, is those two girls, this dude in a snakeskin coat. These people are my family. And we're called to family. But in order to do that, you got to face what you fear the most. Whatever that is. Whether it's you fear being rejected, you fear getting hurt. All the fears that you have, as I think John says in one of his, probably First John, perfect love casts out fear. And I found something the other day, like yesterday, I read this and I sent it to my guys, we before COVID, we were meeting once a month and we call it family dinners. Because we'd be like, hey, it's not just guys, it's bring your wives, bring your kids. Everyone's welcome. It's family dinner. And, that's continued and actually gotten deeper since COVID started. But I saw this quote from Maya Angelou: family isn't always blood. It's the people in your life who want you in theirs. The ones who accept you for who you are. The ones who would do anything to see you smile and who love you no matter what. And that's a hard thing to accept. Like, if you do that, you've got to break a lot of your own rules to find that.
Yep. And you got to step out of your comfort zone and step out of your fear.
Nut up or shut up.
Yep. Great line. Oh, I forgot how much I love that movie. I guess just in general, it's fun pulling these truths out of movies, out of stories. I mean, being an author and just a lover of story, period. It's fun to do that. It's fun looking at my notes, which I also, did not read. I definitely read those before this started when I sat down, 2 minutes before it was supposed to start. But I was just reading through them to see if I did have any last thoughts, and we literally hit every element on there. I mean, just about conquering our fear and stepping out of our comfort zone and family and the importance of community and I just don't really have much. I just love post-apocalyptic stuff because the good ones do that. I mean, it's about that. I mean, you look at Last of Us, the game especially, the show was good but lacking in a couple artistic choices I did not agree with. The game was phenomenal, and I also love this trope that's the the reluctant father figure. You look at God of War, you look at Last of Us. I've got two stories, one that I'm writing right now that's going to kind of have that kind of thing, and they're that reluctant father figure. I don't know so much about Kratos' backstory, but especially like in The Last of Us, it's out of fear, it's out of hurt. And so he doesn't want to let Ellie in. He doesn't want to have that family connection because he had that before and it ended very badly. And it's just funny to see, like, he has his rules. Like he literally has his rules, and he is surviving the apocalypse. And they do a better job of actually showing it in the show than they did in the game. He's not really living. And he kind of has this relationship with Tess, but not really. I would say it's more of a physical thing than it really is anything intimate. And then you have Ellie come along, and he is resistant to it because he's afraid. And when he finally lets her in, he starts living. And then the end, I love the ending of the game because it's just like, it's the what if. How far would you go? And I think The Last of Us is really great, especially in the second game, of taking things way too far and ruining a franchise. But anyway, and so I just love that of like, we have to let other people in to live. And then also, let's go a little bit on Last of Us 2. Don't pursue revenge because it is death. It is for God alone. Because if you do, then you end up with sinking 60 hours into a phenomenal gameplay video game, feeling dead inside because the story sucked. Anyway, sorry about that tangent. I love those games, but man, the second one is just, I can't even replay it because it's just so dark.
It's it goes back to that start with forgiveness. Like, yeah, that hurt me, but I'm going to forgive you. Even like that whole idea, like Jesus is our advocate, and like I'm going to depend on him to defend me. I don't need to defend myself in these situations. Yeah. And that also the revenge thing is, I'm going to let you handle that. They've got to deal with their own life, because what story have we ever seen where pursuit of revenge has ended well?
None.
Yeah.
I mean, it might seem like it for a little bit, and then it just, no.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, even the Princess Bride, he's like, I have no purpose in life now. It's like, I've exacted my revenge. Granted, he becomes the Dread Pirate Roberts, but that's a whole other conversation.
So that's another one I've not seen in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. We watched that for when we did the podcast with Britt, and my wife's like, do you know every line of the movie? Like, apparently so. So, Joshua, thank you for reaching out, like being able to talk about this, and would love to have you back to talk about the road, the opposite end of the apocalypse spectrum.
Yeah, I need to watch it again, because I might watch it and be like, nope, this is way too depressing. I don't want to do it. I just remember like hating it when I first watched it, but I didn't have maturity, and now I love story enough to where I'm like, I gotta get back on that. Like and so I might watch it and be like, nah, let's do something else. I'll talk after.
I've read it, but I haven't watched it.
Yeah, see, I've watched it and haven't read it.
Yeah. So, well, and I think what we talk about is, you talked about these movies we love, why we love them. It's sort of like going out for a meal, and it's like, oh, this was a delicious meal. But if you don't study it, it's like you don't understand what made it good, what made it delicious. And that's what we've sort of done today, is like, look at this movie and say, yeah, we know we enjoy this movie, but why is it? Because the best movies sort of sneak it in. You're like, I didn't even realize why I connected with this character so much, and now I do, and now I'm crying, or now I'm laughing my ass off, or whatever. Those moments,
or a little bit of both.
Yeah. Yes. The best movies do that. You're like, laugh,
Yes.
laugh, cry. You're like, what just happened? Got ambushed.
Yep.
But to dive in and look at them and say, why did I just get ambushed by this movie? Helps you understand who you are, who God created you to be. And if you understand who God created you to be, then you can understand God even better. Because we are a reflection of his image. Granted, on this side of heaven, we're distorted and a bit broke.
A shattered mirror.
Exactly. So Joshua, thanks for coming on. Where can people go to find out more about you, or to read your zombie apocalypse books?
Yeah, so the best place is joshuacchad.com, Chad with 2 Ds. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram, not very well. Facebook, also not very well. And that's at author Joshua C. Chad. I'm getting better at it because I'm actually going through. I'm writing again a lot more consistently, and I'm going through and doing a big direct sales thing. I'm overhauling everything, which I could go off on a big tangent there, but yeah. So Facebook, Instagram, best place is my website, and on my website there's you can sign up for my newsletter, and I'm consistent on that. Once a month, I send it out about what I'm writing, what I am currently listening to because I love music, and then a little bit about me and some other fun stuff.
Awesome. So that was Joshua C. Chad with 2 D's and C for middle name. So
yes.
He doesn't want to hunt him down.
Yep,
And you don't
C
want to
for
hunt
C
him down.
period.
He's packing. His house is an arsenal. So don't go stalking Joshua.
I would not recommend it.
Up in Wisconsin. So this has been Paul McDonald and Joshua Chad talking about Zombieland. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?